Astronomers have discovered J0107a, a massive barred spiral galaxy resembling the Milky Way as it appeared 11.1 billion years ago. This surprising find challenges existing galaxy formation models and shed lights on early cosmic structure evolution. Now let's get into the story on this AI podcast.
All right, settle in. You've given us some truly fascinating source material today, and yeah, we were definitely ready for a deep dive.
We certainly are. What you've shared, it really centers around a discovery in astronomy that's, well, it's genuinely making waves.
That's right. Today we're plunging into the story of a galaxy known as J0107a, and what makes this so compelling is that it's fundamentally shaking up our understanding of the early universe and, just how structures like our own galaxy came to be.
Based on these sources, the core surprise is sort of twofold, really. First, J0107a is, well, they call it a monster. It's vastly massive, incredibly active.
Oh.
But the real shocker is when it existed. We're talking about a time much, much earlier than theories predicted such a developed galaxy could even form.
Now, the second surprise, maybe even the bigger one, it looks shockingly, modern, like an organized galaxy, complete with features we recognize, not like the chaotic, irregular blobs we thought were the norm back then.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack all the details your sources lay out about J0107a, figure out what makes it so utterly unusual, and understand the very real challenge this discovery poses to these long-held ideas about how the universe built itself up.
Okay, let's really dig into what your sources say about J0107a itself then. How do they describe this colossal object?
Well, first off, they really emphasize its sheer size. It's called a colossal galaxy, like you said. And what they were able to figure out from the observations is that it has a barred spiral structure.
A barred spiral, like our Milky Way. But at that age, that sounds early.
Exactly. That's the absolute key point. It existed when the universe was only about a fifth of its current age. The sources actually say it formed when the universe was just 2.7 billion years old.
Wow.
Yeah, that's 11.1 billion years younger than it is today.
So ancient, okay, but also massive. How massive are we actually talking here?
According to the sources, it's over 10 times more massive than our own Milky Way galaxy.
10 times?
Yeah.
Okay. And with that kind of mass, you'd expect, a lot of activity, right? Do the sources confirm that?
Oh, absolutely. It's hyperactive. Its star formation rate is described as an astounding 300 times greater than the Milky Way's rate today.
300 times. Okay, so ancient, giant, super active. But wait, the source also mentions it's actually more compact than the Milky Way despite its mass. That seems a bit counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But that specific combination, extreme mass, incredibly high activity, and a compact size for that mass is precisely why the sources classify it as a monster galaxy. It just packs a huge punch in a, relatively speaking, small volume for its age.
And the telescopes that let them see this were crucial, I assume. LMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array, and NASA's James Webb Space Telescope.
Precisely. Yeah, that combination of observational power was absolutely needed to not only spot it, but to actually resolve its structure at such a huge distance in early time. And that structure.
Well, that's where things get really interesting, like you mentioned earlier. Because finding a barred spiral galaxy existing that early just goes against what we thought.
Right. Completely. I mean, the prevailing wisdom, the standard picture was that galaxies just a few billion years after the Big Bang would be chaotic,
Right.
just blobs of gas, still lumpy and irregular. They hadn't had nearly enough time to settle into these organized structures.
Right.
But J0107a, on the other hand, looks remarkably, mature. Modern, even.
Yeah, I love this quote in the sources from Toshiki Saito. It really captures that surprise. What's surprising is that J0107a looks like present-day spiral galaxies, despite being from a time when such organized structures were thought to be incredibly rare.
And he really drives the point home, too, adding, the Milky Way had billions of years to develop its complex structure. J0107a didn't. It's that sheer level of organization, its maturity, at such a young cosmic age that's just baffling.
Okay, so let's focus on that bar structure for a second. What exactly is that feature, that elongated thing, and why does finding a prominent one here matter so much?
Right, so a bar is essentially a straight line feature of stars and gas that crosses right through the center of many spiral galaxies. You can kind of think of it like a cosmic traffic controller, almost.
Sweet.
Its presence helps funnel gas from the outer disk inwards down towards the core.
And more gas heading into the center means more fuel for making stars, yeah.
Exactly. It's a key mechanism that helps maintain star formation in those central regions. And the source notes J0107a's bar is approximately 50,000 light years long.
50,000 light years, that sounds pretty substantial.
It really is. And for a galaxy this young, having such a, well-defined large bar suggests that the mechanisms needed to create and sustain these complex internal structures were operating very efficiently, very early on in the universe's history.
Okay, and linking back to that extreme activity, that star formation rate, 300 times the Milky Way, your sources point out another really intriguing puzzle piece, which is the apparent lack of galactic mergers.
Yes, this is another key surprise, definitely. In the universe today, right, when you see a galaxy forming stars at such a frantic pace, it's almost always because it's just collided or is colliding with another galaxy.
Right, the crash triggers it.
Exactly. The merger disrupts everything, causing all this gas to rapidly collapse and ignite in a huge burst of star formation, a starburst.
But J0107a shows no signs of having recently smashed into another galaxy.
That's what the source indicates, yeah. It seems to have reached its absolutely monstrous size and kept up this hyperactivity largely, in isolation, on its own. And that really challenges a common assumption that major mergers were basically required for galaxies to grow so large and active back in the early universe. It suggests there might be alternative, maybe faster growth pathways we hadn't fully appreciated before.
So when you put all that together, the age, the huge mass, the organized barred spiral structure, the crazy high activity, but apparently no mergers, what's the overall impact on our current theories? What does this mean for how we think galaxies like ours, like the Milky Way, formed?
Well, look, observations from the Webb telescope, generally speaking, are already pushing back the timeline for when spiral and barred spiral galaxies first popped up. We're just seeing them earlier than expected across the board.
Yeah.
J0107a is simply one of the most extreme and earliest examples we've found so far of this kind of sophisticated structure.
So complex galactic architecture wasn't necessarily something that took billions and billions of years to develop. It might have started shaping up much, much sooner.
Precisely, yeah. As Xu Huang, who's the lead author of the study, is quoted in the sources, theories about the formation of present-day galactic structures may need to be revised. I mean, discoveries like J0107a are essentially forcing astronomers to, rewrite chapters in the cosmic history books. It's that significant.
Okay, we've covered the structure and its implications pretty well. But the sources also make it clear that while we've learned a lot, there's still plenty we don't know about these early monsters.
Oh, absolutely. While Webb gives us these unprecedented views of their morphology, their shape and structure, and understanding their internal dynamics is really the next big challenge.
Dynamics. That's what Toshiki Saito mentions too, right? He says the Webb telescope has been studying the morphology of early massive galaxies intensely recently.
Wow.
However, their dynamics are still poorly understood. So dynamics means how the gas and stars are actually moving within the galaxy.
Yes, exactly that. How is the bar actually funneling the gas? How are the stars orbiting? What are the internal movements that sustain such high activity and organization, especially if these galaxies aren't merger-driven?
Right.
What internal processes are primarily fueling their rapid growth and structuring them so quickly? The sources suggest that's really the critical question now for future research.
All right, so let's bring it back. Why does a galaxy like J0107a, billions of light years away, billions of years in the past, what does it matter to you, our listener, sitting here today?
Well, because this discovery is fundamentally changing the story of where we come from, cosmically speaking. It's about understanding the whole chain of cosmic evolution that led to galaxies like the Milky Way, which is, our home.
And understanding how galaxies form and evolve, that's also directly linked to understanding where perhaps life-bearing worlds might exist, right? Planetary systems form inside galaxies. So if complex, stable galactic structures appeared much earlier than we thought, could that change the potential timeline for when suitable environments for life might have emerged in the universe?
Exactly. J0107a isn't just some distant speck of ancient light. It's actually a powerful clue about the speed and the nature of the processes that built the entire framework of the universe we inhabit today.
Okay, so let's quickly recap this deep dive into your sources about J0107a, just the key takeaways.
Okay, so we learned it's this incredibly massive, super active, yet surprisingly well-organized, barred spiral galaxy. And it's found way back in a very early epoch in the universe, completely defying what we expected for that era.
And despite its extreme activity, that crazy star formation, it appeared to have achieved its size and kept that rate up without relying on the galactic mergers, the collisions, that we thought were necessary triggers for that kind of growth back then.
Right. And this discovery, which was really enabled by telescopes like Webb, it means we genuinely have to revise our timeline and our models for how galaxies form. Complex structures, structures reminiscent of galaxies we see today, like our own Milky Way, seem to have been forming much, much sooner than we previously believed possible.
And maybe here's a thought to leave you with then, something for you to ponder. If organized, truly massive galaxies like J0107a could exist so incredibly early after the Big Bang, what does that imply about the potential for cosmic complexity, and maybe even about the conditions that could support life arising elsewhere in the universe? And just how quickly could that potential have emerged after it all began?
What makes the newly discovered galaxy J0107a so unique compared to other ancient galaxies? Comment it. Thanks.